The topic today is future predictions, famous and grandiosely false future predictions, and how to avoid them. As
Oh my
every
gosh.
year, at the end of the year, we always have all these predictions, right? And it really sucks. I think it's so stupid. And even like you get these messages, don't you want to create a video for LinkedIn and tell them your future predictions? No, I don't. I really don't. I think it's just stupid. So let's discuss that. And
I love it.
I'm curious to know what you think about that. Let's go for it. So, predictions are extremely difficult, especially when they concern the future, Winston Churchill once said. And yet, every year as December rolls around, we are bombarded with a flood of predictions from experts and self proclaimed gurus. It's that season again. But how do we make sense of it all, and what should we do instead to kick off the new year with real success? Welcome back to Code Red, Technology Madness and the Future of Humanity. My name is Ursula Esin, I'm the founder and CEO of Red Swan, and I'm coming to you today from a really cold Vienna, Austria.
And my name is Chris Kalabukas, and I'm coming to you from a very cold Silicon Valley. So it's cold all over.
All over the world, we are freezing. It's
That's
a
right.
new
It's
ice age.
time to get a new jacket on.
Everywhere.
Excuse for clothes shopping.
So let's get cozy and talk about future predictions. Just as
But
a
just
matter,
the next year. Just the next year, not 2025, not beyond that, right?
yes, well, most of the future predictions are just about 2025, which is even more moronic, as I think. But ever since the days of the Oracle of Delphi, humanity has been obsessed with predicting the future and failed miserably time and time again. Some famous examples. The horse will always exist. Automobiles, on the other hand, are merely a passing fad, predicted the president of the Michigan Savings Bank in 1903. The iPhone has no chance of surviving the market. Do you remember who said that, Chris?
No, I don't. Who said that?
Steve Ballmer, then president of Microsoft, is
I
reported to
remember
have.
that guy jumping on stage. Developers, developers, developers. That was the most fun. That guy.
That was really cringe, yes. We can call it fun or cringe, whatever you like. And Steve Ballmer in 2007 predicted that the iPhone has no chance of surviving the market. Boy, how was he wrong about that. And
Mm-hmm.
the German futurologist Matthias Hawkes explained in 2001 confidently the internet will not develop into a mass medium like radio or television anytime soon. Well, all these respective gentlemen have been carried away by one sided predictions about the future, and they were all wrong. How can we avoid such an embarrassment, Chris?
You can't. That's the problem. These predictions are a result of a lack of data, right?
Mhm.
It's a lack of data. So the problem with all of this is that everyone's applying their sort of their personal worldview on things based on the data that they've gotten, and maybe they haven't observed enough, or maybe they haven't seen the signals, but
Mm.
they make these predictions based on this limited set of data that we have. And that's the problem with us as human beings. We only have a limited set of data to work with because we're not all seeing, all knowing, omniscient, omnipresent. So we only have this little subset of data to work with. And that's exactly what's happening with these individuals, is that they're looking at this little subset of data, and they're looking at extending that subset of data, because that's basically what we all do when we predict. We just look at what's happening now, and we try to extend that into the future. And
Exactly. Let
the
me give you an
problem,
example I found on
go
the
ahead.
internet for that, and I think this explains a lot. Someone posted, my 3-month-old son is now twice as big as when he was born. He's on track to weigh 7.5 trillion pounds by age 10. I think this really illustrates very well what is wrong with linear future predictions, right?
Exactly.
You take today's or yesterday's data and just project it into the future. And
Yeah.
that totally doesn't make sense. But what can we do instead?
Well, see, the problem is that people have forgotten. Well, I don't know if they've forgotten. They feel that there is this sense of continuity in the world, that whatever was
Hmm.
happening yesterday
Will
is
happen
going
in
to
the
happen
future.
today
Mm.
and will also happen tomorrow. So that there's this sense of continuity, that one thing follows the next. But the reality is, it's more like a crapshoot or a roulette wheel,
Mm.
where what happens one day, what happened yesterday or the day before or any time in history will never happen again. Every single moment is a new moment. And we get this feeling or this intuition that we think that things are going to continue as they are, but they could change in a second at every moment. And that, but we're taking that intuition and we're embedding it in our systems and making ourselves think that these things will continue the way they've continued when they really aren't. We're not taking enough random chance into the equation when we're thinking about it. And at the same time, as my earlier point, we're not looking at enough data points to be able to make our decision. Because one of the things that we do when I worked with the Institute for the Future is that we were looking at signals, right? I mean, that's what you use in order to figure out where things are going. So there's signals that show you that things are going in certain directions. So the internet was a signal, AI is a signal. There's sort of macro signals and micro signals. And the problem is that we as human beings, we decide which signals to look at and which signals we feel are most important. And then we extend those things into the future. So we're actually making two mistakes. It's like we may be picking the wrong signals, and we're also extending those things into the future. We're looking at the past because the past is really the only thing we know. And we're basing the future on the past when
Right.
it will never be the same, never ever be the same. This is why this is the big problem I have with the success industry too, where people are going, just do everything I did and you'll be successful too. You can just do everything Elon Musk did and you will also have $400 billion. And I'm like, no, he was in the right place at the right time
Right.
at the right moment. And all of these
Mm.
things occurred then, but they will never occur again. Something will occur. I mean, you could still become a billionaire, but your path to getting there is going to be completely different from anybody else's path.
Yes, and I think there are like trillions of parameters that define the future, and
Oh,
that's also
absolutely.
the beautiful thing about it. I think we cannot predict the future, but because it's not decided yet. I'm not. I think that's actually this fight between determinism and free will.
Mm.
And of course, there are people who say, no, it's determined, but I do not think so. I do not think that we totally can decide how it will look like because, as I said, there are so many parameters. Also, there are so many subconscious motivations we even don't know. I guess every one of us knows this iceberg picture, like only like 5% of everything we are thinking about is in our conscious mind, and 95% is in our subconscious mind. And most of the time, our subconscious motivations are running the show and are creating our future. And
Exactly.
that is why I want to dive deep in these subconscious things and bring them to light. I think that is much more conducive to create the desirable future, because when we are aware of our own patterns, then we will not believe in gurus. We will not believe in leaders that are also not conducive to a desirable future. And we will start to create our future ourselves and not so much rely on future predictions, which are by nature always deterministic.
Well, the thing about future predictions too is that a lot of times they're not really even a prediction. They're more
Mm,
like marketing. It's kind of like
right.
polls, right?
Oh,
So
that's so true.
polls around election time are not really indicative of what people think. It's indicative of what people want to think, and it's
Or should
indicative of
think.
what the pollsters want you to think. So
Exactly.
everything that comes out,
Mm,
it's marketing, and it's kind of the same way with predictions. It's kind of like they want you to think a certain way, so they will make a certain prediction to
right.
get a specific response. And
Exactly.
it's kind of sad because it's turning our world into a world of views and clicks and money. So
Right.
people will do and say whatever they want for views and clicks and money, even if it's the most outrageous thing that they do not believe at all. That will become the thing. So someone will say, "Oh, we'll have AGI by next year." Like, Really? Do you really think we're going to have AGI by
Oh,
next year? Or are you
I've
just
heard
telling us
that
that to make us?
so many times. Still not there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's also self-fulfilling prophecies, right? Is I
Yeah.
want it to be like that. It's not I really look at how it really could be. I want it to be like that. And as you said, there are things that are not conducive to humanity or to contribute to humanity's advancement. For me, a very good example is sometimes we just cannot know what could be really a success. So I would have predicted that the fidget spinner is a pipe
Hmm.
drop. But as a matter of fact, this moronic thing, I've rarely seen something so moronic.
Right.
But with enough self-confidence, you can apparently convince millions of people that they need such an utterly useless thing, which is most definitely really not conducive to humanity's advancement in any way, shape, or form. So
Right.
I get very angry when I see that because things like that, the fidget spinner, I think it's
Hmm.
really a symbol for hypnotizing the masses, right? Just look at
Yes.
this little thing. And we have a lot of mechanisms. We have the media, we have Hollywood, we have a lot of things that already hypnotize people. I really don't need such a stupid thing. And it was
We don't need more hypnosis.
we don't need more hypnosis. We need people actually to wake up and to create our future together. I think it's really time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And if you think about it, that's what social media is too. It's just sucking people into a time wasting utility. And if you think about it from your perspective as the person who's using the social media, it is a time waste for you. You very
When
get
you
very
only
little out of it.
consume, when you consume.
Yes.
The other
Yes.
thing is
But
when you produce something and you make money out of it, it's a whole different story, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. But I think 90% of people are actually just consuming it.
Consuming, yes.
And who's getting the result of the consumption is the media companies or the tech companies. They're able to give you send more ads in your direction, right?
Mm.
So you're helping them make money, but you're not making any money out of it yourself. Now that's changing, but I
Mm.
think we need to talk. Let's swing back to predictions for a second, because I think that people don't understand. And then the most important thing about predictions is really the timing, if you ask me, because not only so you have to look at signals, you have to look at the data, you have to look at uh, the fact that everything is new, but you also have to look at timing, because every single thing is possible, right? The only question is when will it happen,
Mm.
right? So when I did a lot of futurist work. I've done a lot of futurist work, and one of the things that I've noticed time and time again is that we are pretty accurate in some of our predictions. We can be pretty accurate. So if you have the right amount of signals, and you understand that there's a lot of random variables that could be thrown in there at the same time, you could still come up with plenty of accurate predictions. But the problem is not that the prediction is wrong. The problem is that the timing is wrong on the prediction, right? So the thing will occur, just not now. It's kind of like being a meteorologist, right? So a meteorologist will say it's going to rain at 5 p.m., right? So it might rain at 4 p.m. or it might rain at 10 p.m., but it's going to rain. The question is, when is it going to rain? So this sense that predictions are wrong is not really because the prediction is wrong. It's because the prediction is not happening at the right time. So you could say, oh, here's my plan for 2025, or here's my prediction for 2025. And you could predict something like AGI, right? We're predicting AGI in 2025. We'll probably get AGI in 2030 or 2035 or some other year, but you're going to say, oh, that prediction was wrong because you didn't have it in 2025. It's a timing thing. So and everything could occur. The question is just, when will it occur?
Yes, and why would you even make such predictions? I would question the motivation for that. And always, sometimes, I think especially with artificial intelligence, there's a lot of fear around that. And we
Mm,
talked about the hypnotizing factor of the media already. I also think there's another factor. It's fear and anxiety. When
mm,
people are in anxiety, they do not look at the real problems, and they do not look to create the future they really want to come about, because they are so anxious. So if you keep people in a constant state of anxiety, it's actually very convenient, right?
right. And then you don't have a if it's kind of like you can't really think about the future and decide where you're going to go and do positive things if you think you have no future, if you think
Exactly.
there is no hope,
Mm.
if you think
Right.
things are not going to get better, if you think that things are not going to get better, you're just going to sort of give up and do nothing, right?
Right.
So we have to have an optimistic vision of where things are going, or at least that things could get better. Maybe they won't get better, but could get better.
And
And if you
that we
feel that
can
things
do something about it. This is
exactly,
the worst thing about these media narratives, is that people become so powerless, and they feel very powerless to the future, and then they believe in this deterministic future, either in a
yes,
positive or in a negative way, but both is deterministic. If an what is it, astronomy, astrologer
astrology, yeah,
tells you the future in a very positive way, it's also a deterministic kind of future, because I believe it's already decided for me. And
right,
I do not believe that. I think we have a hand in it. I think that it's still not decided. That's why it's so exciting. And is also why it's so uncertain, of course,
yeah,
because we can still create it. We can create it together. And all these gurus and experts actually are usually people who like control and
hmm
who want to create a future for you. And I actually say, no, thank you.
yeah. And also the other thing about it's interesting how you were mentioning the subconscious earlier is that
Mm.
we as human beings we pay attention to negatives more than we pay attention to positives, and
Yes,
it's a real
for
struggle.
survival,
Yeah,
of
so it's a
course.
real
Yes.
struggle. So what happens
Mm.
is that all this media pushes the negative narrative because they want our attention.
Mm.
So it's really tough for us to break out of that mold and go, you know what? I'm not going to think about the negative side of things. When something negative comes along, I'm going to try and reduce its priority and think about the positive, optimistic things. So it's difficult for most human beings to get to that point, but it does. You can do it
Mm.
with some
You
effort.
you shouldn't deny the reality of bad things, but I think the next step should always be to find a solution. And this is also what the media doesn't do. It gives you a ton of problems and things to worry about, but it never delivers a solution. So maybe instead of future predictions, we should create future solutions.
Right. Well, it's all about again, it's all about views and clicks and money,
Mm.
right? I mean, if we were, it's kind of like you're going to get what you're incented to get. So if you're incented to get people to look at things and click on things, then you're going to make money. You're going to be getting more people to do that. If you're going to incent people to actually come up with real solutions, then you might actually get more of that. I mean, because we're amazing, we're
Be-
incredible, but
totally. Yes.
we're not applying our brain power to the
Mm.
right problems. We're applying our power to just limited surface things that have very little meaning. But if we just applied our brain power to the big problems, then who knows what we'd be able to solve.
And that's absolutely true. I When I talk to high school students, I always tell them there's actually a very simple way to do that. And this is for them, it's of course a little bit strange. Take a pen and put it to paper, really pen to paper, not typing. It doesn't have the same effect. And you write down everything that worries you and that concerns you just for yourself, and then read it just for yourself. Don't read it aloud, and then find a solution. And it's not like I'm saving the world. It's things like, I feel uncomfortable, I get a blanket or something like that. But you train the mind to find solutions, and very soon, when you do that regularly, you find out that you're actually capable of finding solutions and to get out of bad feelings. And this is very simple, but everyone can actually do that. And when everyone trains themselves to become solution finders, just imagine this world.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. But a lot of people don't even want that. They expect solutions to just sort of fall in their lap, or someone else is going to to do it for me. We need to take responsibility over our own lives. I mean, who is it? I forget who said it. Some famous self-help person said, "Make your own bed first. Like, work on yourself
I
first. Work
think it's
on."
Jordan Peterson. Make your bed.
He said it was either that or clean your room first or something like that. It was like work on yourself before you work on anybody else.
Sure. Yes, I think that's absolutely true. And we shouldn't call for gurus. I would say even the time of the guru is over. You mentioned several times now that you think the people who were so wrong about their predictions just didn't have the right data. Does that mean that if we had the right data, we could predict it? That would mean if we have AI that can really analyze trillions of data, can we?
No, of course not.
What is that the solution?
No. There's no. See, the problem is that we could have as much data. We could be omniscient and have all of the data in the world. But the problem is because what's happening, because every moment is new, that throws a randomness into every single situation. Because you don't know what of those signals. So think of it. Let's say we had all the signals in the world and we could see everything that was going on everywhere. We would still have to decide which one of these signals is important and which one isn't, right? And the only way to decide if something is important and isn't important, it's completely random, because you could see, it's kind of like what that prediction. I think somebody else predicted there will only be 5 computers in the world or something at some point. Some other, was that Bill Gates?
IBM.
No, I don't think he was.
No, it was at
IBM maybe.
Yes,
because they're looking at a small set of signals and extending those signals out. But you can't extend those signals out because you don't know which ones will stay and which ones will go. It's kind of like, have you heard of these ETFs that are trading? There are these 2 ETFs. One's called the inverse Kramer. So you know Jim Cramer, the famous stock picker on, I forget which channel
everything.
he's on.
Yes,
yeah, he's wrong about everything.
Kramer would make sense.
So they created an ETF called inverse Kramer, which goes against everything he says, and actually it did a pretty good job. But the problem is that the people who were running it decided to shut it down because it was too much work to manage. And the reason why it was too much work to manage was because he sends off so many signals, this direction, that direction. They didn't know which ones to pick in order to say, well, this is a good inverse Kramer pick, or this is a bad inverse Kramer pick. So there's just too many signals out there, and we don't know which ones are important. And I think that's the biggest determining factor, is that if we knew which signals were important and which ones would die off and which ones would extend, which ones would be signals that extend into the future and which ones aren't, then we'd be able to make those predictions. But we never know, because every single moment, one signal could become more important than the other. So it's the same example as your fidget spinner, right? So you have these fidget spinners out there. And like you said, I look at it, you look at it, we're saying, well, that's dumb. Who's going to want that? Right? But we are, in our minds, the signal was, oh, that's going to disappear. It was a dumb idea. But in other people's minds, they were like, oh, this is not a bad way to pass the time, right? So what ended up happening is this is not a bad way to pass the time signal grew, and the other one didn't grow. So the problem is that even if we knew everything, we wouldn't know which signal was more important than which other signal, because every single thing is different. And I also find it interesting that, but at the same time, so as a contrary viewpoint, human beings are creatures of habit. We like doing the same thing over and over again. So when it comes to predicting human behavior, we are a little predictable. So we're more predictable than say other things, right? But we're predictable in the fact that we like to do the same things over and over again. So some of our human behavior can be predicted. So if you have enough information on a human being, you might be able to say, oh, this person did this, and this in the past when these triggers occurred. So if we bring these triggers in again, then maybe that human being will do the same thing. But that's only because, go ahead.
Because the subconscious runs the show. That's
exactly
why I mentioned it. When you become aware of these patterns, then you can step out of it. But the thing is, they still work. Like, for example, I studied advertisement psychology, and you have these things in advertisement that are clearly used to revoke some special feelings. And for
Yep.
example, I totally know how they do it in the coffee advertisement. And I recognize it, and I can analyze it and I can explain it, but it still works. I see it and I want
Hmm.
to drink coffee. And that's it.
Exactly. But
That's really
it
interesting.
works for most people. It doesn't work for
Mm.
everybody because some people can get past the programming,
That's right.
right?
And also, I found something out about myself. We talked about the hypnotizing fact of all
Hmm.
these things. I cannot be hypnotized, for example. So I
Really?
usually,
Have you
yeah,
tried?
yes. So I usually can really cut through the bullshit because I cannot be hypnotized. I cannot be
Mm,
hypnotized by TV. I cannot be hypnotized by the media. I'm always too critical. And I found out that it could be it's because I cannot be hypnotized. And
nice.
yes, and it's that I think it's about 30% of people can easily be hypnotized, and 30% it's a bit harder, and maybe 30% who cannot really be hypnotized.
Oh, that's why whenever you see those hypnosis shows, they always bring out a bunch of people on stage, and then they kind of filter through them. They go, okay, this guy's
Oh,
hypnotizable. She is. He isn't. She is. He isn't. And then they get rid of the rest of them because they know who's
I
hypnotizable
didn't
and
know
who isn't.
that. I didn't know that, but it
Have you
perfectly
ever been
makes
to
sense.
a hypnosis show or seen a video?
I've seen a
I,
video. Yes, yes.
yeah, the only time I've ever seen, times I've been to one, they do that. They bring a bunch of people on stage,
Mm.
and he goes through them. He kind of goes, okay, let me find the people who are susceptible. So he finds the people who are susceptible by just trying something simple.
Yes,
And
yes, and
if they
you
fall,
can see it immediately.
yeah, if they
What
fall
you're
for the simple
doing.
thing, it's like, okay, you stay on stage, you go. So they already pre-filter them out.
Of course, yes, because otherwise it doesn't work, right? Would be a bit frustrating.
Yeah,
So let's circle back to the gurus. That's also
yeah.
why I don't believe in gurus. I don't fall for them, and I also don't fall for these kind of future predictions because, again, I think the future isn't decided yet. We actually really can create it, and all the people in history also that were successful in positive and negative ways actually created the future. They did not wait to it to happen. So
Well,
I
I don't believe in these predictions as a prediction.
hmm,
So when somebody says this is going to happen next year, I don't use it as a, well, yeah, it's definitely going to happen. It's more of a data point that can be
hmm.
added to,
Of
okay,
course, it could be a direction, right? It
yeah,
also
based on
could
what
be a
they
signal.
know,
Hmm.
based on the signals they've looked at and what they've determined, then that's what they think. But then person X and person Y, they'll say something different because they look at different signals.
Yes, and for me, it's also always much more interesting. What do we do with it? What do we
Right.
create with it? Yes, of course, I can look at trend analysis, for example. There are trends because they are also made, right? We
Yep.
talked about the narratives in the media, in politics, etc. This is made. There are
Mm.
narratives that are actually made, and then the polls only show how good you were in making
Yep.
them. And I don't know, did you ever read the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays?
No,
He
I
actually
did not.
describes that. He invented that. And oh no, is it called propaganda? Because the thing is actually he renamed propaganda to public relations. And this is what I studied. And so
That's about right.
and he describes that very openly actually that polls are also just used to create a narrative, just as you said, to
Hmm.
create a narrative and to
Yeah.
influence the public opinion. So this is very interesting, and everyone actually should know that, and all these predictions are also part of that. And another thing is, of course, people like to be right. So at least I could try to be right. And maybe AI can help me. And now we have all this data, and AI is the new Oracle of Delphi. I'm very happy that you actually said no, it doesn't make a difference, because I think there's so much more to human creation and to the human potential that only the data. There is also, we have, of course, we have intuition, we have a will to create something new. If it is not numbed out, right, then
Oh
actually
yeah.
everyone wants to be creative.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I find it interesting that people still put a lot of importance on the past, right? They look at the past and they constantly, this is what they do. They look at the past and they extend that into the future. They think, well, this is going to continue the way it's going, and this is going to change. When if every moment really truly is new, then there is no way to predict the future, and there is no way to know
Right.
where things are going to go. But we build all of these systems based on this false premise that the past is going to continue. And this is the thing I
Right.
was.
But the interesting thing for me is that this is actually usually short-term thinking, because they
Mm,
think in my lifetime it was like this, it will always be like that. If you actually go 1,000 years to the past, you have a different view. That's even, you
right.
can learn a lot, right? And then you know, oh my God, things did not, oh, they changed. Things
Yeah.
changed. So it can be interesting to look to the past to learn for the future, also to escape our patterns and not repeat the cycle time and time again, right? It's there is this saying that history repeats itself, but some say it's the fools who repeat the history. And there I
Oh
come back
yeah,
to
I
this:
like that phrase.
if we don't break our own patterns, we are forced to repeat the history, but we are not forced to repeat the history. Let's step out of it. Let's use our free will to actually step out of that.
But the problem is that if every moment is new, then the past doesn't really apply to the future. So you could look at the history and go, oh, I'm not going to make the same mistake, but you could conceivably make the same mistake in a different way,
Right.
right?
Mm. Yeah, I guess
So
it's evolving in a spiral. So you come back to the same point, but at a higher level, hopefully.
yeah, it's kind of like those time travel stories where
Mm.
you go back into the past and you do something like kill Hitler, and it turns out that you go back to the future and and everything's exactly the same, and you're like, what happened? It's like some other person stepped
Mm.
in and did
Mm.
what he did,
Because
right?
the patterns were there, so you have to change the patterns, right?
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
about one single person. That's also a good thing to know. Actually, it's never one person, it's a pattern that occurs.
yeah.
So I think we still have to learn a lot. I don't think we learn it in these deterministic kind of future predictions, but if we use our free will to create a new future together, let's do that. Let's do that at the end of the year, at the beginning of the new year. How about that? What? Let's wrap this up, Chris. What are your final words for 2024?
Well, my final words. Well, don't look back.
Mhm.
Keep
Oh
moving
yeah, oh
forward.
yeah. Let's skip 2024. This was a shit show.
Well, it's like, no, seriously, don't look back, because everyone is always looking back. Now, I think people ascribe too much importance to what has already occurred, because there's people who are still living in the past. They want to revisit the past. They want to look at the past. Or they think the past is so much better than the future and all that, or the present and all that. And I think we need to break away from that. In that, if every moment truly is new, then we have the ability to create as many new moments as we want. We can be unburdened by the past. So don't look at the past and go, this is, you like that? We can,
Do you know that this is actually a Mao Zedong quote?
yes.
On basis of this, they destroyed all the cultural heritage in
I know,
China.
it's horrible. It's
It's
horrible. I've been
horrible.
actually been reading about that, and it's awful. But
Mhm.
in some ways, it's actually because I think that's one of the things that's actually holding us back, is that we're looking at the past and we're
And
kind of
and we take yesterday's data to create the future,
which is impossible,
which
because you
is
cannot create the
impossible.
future with yesterday's data.
Exactly.
And if we keep looking at the past, we're going to keep looking at the good things from the past and try to recreate those, and we're going to look at the bad things of the past and try to stop those from happening. But the
Mm.
problem is that, if every moment is new, then all of that could occur again in a completely different way, and we would never be able to predict it.
Mm.
So the best thing for us to do is, instead of thinking what's going to happen next year, we should think about what's going to happen in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or 50 years,
Agree.
and then work backwards to figure out how do we
Mm.
get to to how do we get to that future? Like, use it to drive us forward. And like you said before, we are the ones who make the decisions of what directions we're going to go in to get to that point. And if we don't know where we're going, how do we know if we're going to be making the course corrections that we need to in order to get to where we want to go?
Right. So the future is and remains volatile and uncertain, otherwise it would not be called the future but the past. But that is also the good news about it. It means that the future has not yet been decided. It means we can still shape it. Anything else would be incredibly boring and would also contradict our free will. It's neither possible nor desirable to eliminate the uncertainty of the future. We simply have to learn to deal with it in a different way. Let's spend less time on predictions of a deterministic future and devote more time to shaping a desirable one. Because the best way to predict the future is to create it, as Abraham Lincoln once put it so beautifully. If you like this, you might also like our other episodes on innovation. We will link it here and here in the video.